Last time on Weekly Manga Recap. Actually, that's a bad idea. I have a bad memory when it comes to almost anything that we talk about on this show. So I would be a poor choice for myself to do the recap of last time's Weekly Manga Recap. But I wanted to do the meme, so it's there.
I wish I could like refute you, but I also don't know. Sometimes if it's been just long enough since I've actually recorded the episode, I have to like sit down because I'm the one who writes that little like blurb description that episodes have, and I have to sit there and be like, "What the fuck happened?"
What are the notable
in
things
manga last week? It's like a legit thing sometimes where I'm like, "There's got to be something memorable that happened in the chapters last week." I know there is.
It's April 24th, guys, of 2024. And we finally did it. We've been doing the manga podcast for over a decade, and we're actually going to talk about Dragon Ball today. It's been a long time coming, and there were parts of this that I had just never read before, and I'm glad that we did finally. Because you had read this before previously.
A couple years back, I decided to like take the plunge. There was a period of time where I was like, I had like a weird system for a while that I wished I still had, but there was like a system where like every night I would like devote time to read like 10 to 20 chapters of something that was in the Shonen Jump Vault.
Sure.
So that's how I got through all of the rest of Haikyuu. I read Kuroko Basket, Demon Slayer, and eventually Dragon Ball. So, and also I did like rereads of One Piece and stuff like that. So I did read all of Dragon Ball, but I stopped exactly when it makes the transition into Z.
Which is what we stopped at today.
Yes.
We did not read all of the, I guess, original Dragon Ball manga run. Ever since the anime was split into two parts, the series has kind of been marketed that way, with everything in between the time skip where Goku gets married and has a kid is put off in Dragon Ball Z, and everything before that is in just Dragon Ball. No denominational marker afterwards.
Dragon Ball full stop. It's what the kids like to call it.
Yeah. I almost want to like sarcastically say like, oh, have you never heard of Dragon Ball before? But I feel like I can't even like joke about that. I don't know if there is a single person who knows what manga are that is not familiar with Dragon Ball to at least some degree. Like even if you have avoided it as much as you possibly can, because you're like, that looks stupid, and you have tried to stay away from it, you have to know what it is.
I think if you are familiar with anime or any like if you're even remotely into this genre, then like you at least know of the memes, you know of like the characters. It's an ubiquitous sort of series. It's penetrated through everything. Like even stuff that isn't like in the Dragon Ball wheelhouse will reference Dragon Ball.
Yeah, even if it seems like it's completely outside the genre, it's just so pervasive and so influential. And this series is going to be celebrating its 40th anniversary this coming November. Recently, of course, there was a great tragedy that we all heard, which was that the creator of the series, Akira Toriyama, passed away. And that was one of the big impetuses for us to finally actually talk about this. And I guess the way I kind of want to talk about it in relation to myself is how reading this manga felt with the context of what my experience with Dragon Ball had been previously. So I will let you guys all know that like a lot of people in situations similar to myself, as in kids who grew up in the '90s and ended up having hobbies dedicated to anime and manga afterwards. I experienced this when I was a kid. I actually watched Dragon Ball before it was on Toonami. Dragon Ball Z,
Oh,
I should say.
aren't you so clever?
So slightly ahead of the curve was I.
You're like, I
It was
was into
on
Dragon Ball Z before it was big.
highly unlikely. But I like it was on at some time where it was like on before the Fox Kids block, like on the same station or something like that.
This does
Very
sound
weird.
vaguely familiar, yeah.
Um, and so I watched it every Saturday morning. I made sure to get up early on Saturday morning because it was on at like 7:30, which is criminal to be putting interesting shows on at that time on a weekend. Uh, and then eventually, of course, it got moved on to Toonami. Watched that like after school, like every day until they hit that one part where they had stopped doing episodes. So I kept on seeing that one preview where Goku had just arrived on Namek, and then you had to just wait months and months and months for them to translate more episodes. And from there, that was like I think the first what you would properly call a shonen battle series that I had ever seen, and more would follow after that. But I did kind of fall out of touch with Dragon Ball after that point. Like I never watched GT or anything like that. I have seen some of the movies that came out, starting with like Battle of Gods, but I haven't watched any of the Super. And but for a long time, I'd heard of the difference between Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. I did watch some of Dragon Ball while it was also on Toonami. That was the weird thing, was that after Dragon Ball Z was big, then afterwards they're like, well, there's more Dragon Ball
Yeah,
that we can
there you
also just
go.
put on Toonami, and kids will watch that too. And I did watch a good chunk of that, but I stopped watching it around when the Red Ribbon Army stuff was happening. So
Okay.
roughly halfway through,
Yeah,
I
that's a
think is
decent
when
chunk through.
I stopped watching it. But I had never read any of this really before, outside of like tiny little bits to just kind of like do it to like start reading it, and then I stopped immediately because I was like, this is taking too much time for me.
Yeah, there's a pretty big commitment to it. Should I tell what I have experience wise with Dragon Ball, I guess?
I'm inviting you to, yes.
All right, cool. I have watched Dragon Ball Z. Like that was just something that it aired on television. And this is the weird throwback as we slowly move further and further into anime boomers. That used to be how you just got exposed to stuff. Is you were like, well, there's a block of cartoons on, and this happens to be one of them. So I just watched Z from there, and I think I had seen like episodes of it during the Frieza saga. I never really stuck around. I started really watching it though during the Cell saga, and then got super into it. Watched it for a huge long time. Watched it into the Majin Buu arc, and then I think it was around Kid Buu that I was just like, man, I don't have time for this anymore.
Oh man, when is this ever gonna end?
Yeah, I was like, this fucking thing's got so many forms. What's the point? So I sort of stopped there, but then I remember checking out some GT episodes for as good as that did. And then I think around that time or somewhere in that area is when they started airing Dragon Ball original series. And I watched that for a decent chunk. I don't remember if I got through the first, oh God, what is the tournament? The Budokai Tenkaichi?
The Tenkaichi.
The Tenkaichi. So I think I was in maybe that, but I don't 100% remember. But eventually then I was like, yeah, Dragon Ball fucking rules. I started watching Super. I watched many of the movies. I saw the Broly movie in theaters, which feels like a fever dream. And
to go to a movie theater.
I mean, it's different now. I'm literally trying to find times to go see the Spy Family movie that's in theaters. So
yeah.
At different times, but I have more familiarity now with the Dragon Ball franchise. But Yeah, I mean, I started watching the Cell Saga. I was probably like 12 or something like that, like pretty young. So,
Yeah.
it definitely had its like formulaic sort of foundation on me. And, now that we've read so many manga, I can easily just see the stuff that was like created after Dragon Ball where you're like, ah, yes, all of this was clearly inspired from Dragon Ball.
Hmm. It's very weird to go back and look at the manga as it originally was and notice a couple of things with the context of watching. I mean, obviously, there's more by definition, there are people who have watched more Dragon Ball than us because we
Yes.
haven't watched all of it.
Yes.
And there are people who have watched all of it multiple times. Uh, but there are certain things that you kind of associate with Dragon Ball Z, especially, like big power auras, and charging up on power because that way you can have a lot less animation and you can spend a lot of time just doing that without having to actually progress the fight scene or the
Yes.
story. These are techniques that literally were like kind of pioneered by the Dragon Ball anime
Mm-hmm.
because they were releasing it continuously every week, and they were like, we've got to not catch up with the manga, so we've got to buy time for more manga
Yeah.
source stuff to come out. And one of that was by artificially extending fight scenes, uh, and so to go from that into especially very early Dragon Ball in the manga, where the chapters were like a dozen pages long, and to see how much would get done every single chapter so quickly, I was like dizzy by the end of the first story arc. I was like, how did this get done? Like, how did he do all of this? Like, it's even compared to just general like Shonen Jump popular manga these days, things go by at a very fast
Yeah.
clip, but also a lot gets done uh, in especially the early chapters. It gets to the point eventually where, especially as the martial arts emphasis and the fighting emphasis takes over, where it's like, okay, there's a little bit more time that gets dedicated to individual fights. But I think that I believe that the entire first time that they gathered the Dragon Balls takes 24 chapters.
Yeah, it's
The
it's not a
entire time.
tremendously long period of time. I think the first Kamehameha happens within 14 chapters or so. Like,
Very quickly, yeah.
yeah. Um yeah, it's very interesting reading Dragon Ball and seeing just the sort of talent that Toriyama had. We'll get more into specifics. I'm sure people expect us to mention a couple things from the series as it is. But one of the things that just like I want to acknowledge is one, how like effortlessly Toriyama creates a cool world. Like,
Hmm.
there's a visual that pops into your mind when you think of Dragon Ball. It's like a random battle
Moss
taking
topped
place.
mountains.
Yeah, like a bunch of green top mountains that are like in pillars or whatever, middle of nowhere. But like beyond that, his worlds are full of like cool monsters and like weird powers, and like I don't know why it's so alien to me now, but there's never anyone explaining it. Like Goku's first opponent
No.
in the first Tenkaichi tournament is like a fucking pterodactyl
It's like,
person.
yeah.
No one stops to be like, he belongs to this race. These are, and nope, just the pterodactyl people exist. They live in this world. Deal with it.
Yeah, pretty much. It's really interesting because it feels like everything could be in the world of Dragon Ball. Uh, because the setting changes so drastically all the time. Because this Dragon Ball is partially based off of Journey to the West, but and also it's like it's got a big emphasis on martial arts. It's influenced by like Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan films, which Toriyama really liked. Uh, but if you start off with those things, it's like you get such an incomplete vision of what all is included in the series. Bulma, of course, is the daughter of the most famous inventor in the world who has capsule technology. So everyone just carries around capsules where they have vehicles and houses that pop out. There are just animal people just all over the place with no explanation. One of the times that I laughed the hardest when I was reading this was during the first Tenkaichi that you see. They introduce like the Grand Master who is overseeing proceedings, and he's a dog man, and he comes out and he goes, "Woof, thank you, Master," and he leaves, and you never see him again.
I mean, I feel like
there are movie monsters in this, like Mummy and Dracula.
Yeah, they're just there. They're part of this world. I do think one thing we should also just really talk about is the humor of Dragon Ball, which I want to go on two angles with, which is one angle, not all of it ages well.
No,
not all of it's perfect. We'll get into it. But I'm also sometimes just very floored by how funny Toriyama is. Like he infects his series with like just the levity to it. Everything is very comedic and silly in Dragon Ball. Until the very end when it stops like on a dime and it's like, oh, this is just Dragon Ball Z, but he's a little shorter. But like early on, everything is so full of jokes, and I don't know if all of them land. We read Sandland, and I don't know if either of us really came away with like our favorite comedy or anything like that. But in rereading it, I'm like, there are really, really funny jokes. There's one that's tied to maybe the worst thing in this series that I don't want to get into right now, but it involves two shapeshifters who know that other shapeshifters are around, transforming into bad versions of the characters and just carrying on a conversation, and they're both just so stupid they don't recognize this is not what either of these two characters look like. And I don't know why. I was like, this is comedically a very funny premise.
It's just both of them going, okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It's a world where it feels like anything can happen. I mean, one of the first stories involves like some criminals are, bugging a bunch of people. So Goku uses his staff, which can extend, to just put them on the moon. And he just puts them there.
Yeah, that's just the end of a situation. A guy has the power to just turn people into carrots with a touch.
Yeah,
An absurdly broken ability. Majin Buu would be fucked had he run into that. He would have let that motherfucker touch him, and boom, he's a carrot. You're done for. But Goku finds this problem, and he's like, what if I just whoop, and just drops them off on the moon? That problem's solved. They live up there now.
Well, until Roshi blows up the moon.
Yeah. Well, I really wish there was one panel after that happened. Like but you just see the people looking like, hey, what's that?
I also have to give credit because it's a world that in ways it feels random because so much different stuff is in the world. There's movie monsters, there's advanced technology, there's an army that is trying to take over the world. There are balls that grant wishes. There are animal people. There is martial arts out the wazoo all over the place. Later on, it'll turn out that there are, space aliens and a whole other thing in addition to all of that. But that also helps with a couple of things, which are the fact that Dragon Ball can have a very fluctuating tone. Even in this early part of the series where a lot of it is jokey, there can be moments where like, hey, someone just gets freaking brutally murdered. And it doesn't feel out of place because it's within this is like a martial arts drama with a lot of comedic elements type of story. There can be, people do really stupid things in this for the dumbest reasons. The Red Ribbon Army is a very serious, like, dangerous group of people that have murderers, assassins, racists, basically, all working for them, and they've got massive machines and guns and stuff. they're the bad guys. They're the bad guy army. And it turns out that the reason they're gathering the Dragon Balls is because their commander wants to be taller.
Yeah.
That's the only reason why he wants the Dragon Balls, is so that then he'll be tall and charismatic, and then he can lead his army to victory. Even though, like, they seem like they're doing pretty well when he's just shorter than average. So, and it all just feels like it all goes together.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like anything is out of place, or like, well, that didn't seem called for. That shouldn't have happened. And Goku, I think, is a big reason for that. Goku's a very simple character. He's a kid who fights, likes fighting, and likes being a bad guys. So no matter what situation that he is in, it feels like he fits in to the situation regardless of the tone or what's going on.
Yeah, I think Goku adds a huge amount to the series. His personality is very easy to read and understand, but at the same time, it's very iconic, which is like the trademark you want out of a main character. Like someone who's easy to get, but instantly memorable. Like, you know, a situation comes up and you're like, I can imagine how Goku would react to that, you know?
Yeah.
Those are the best ones. So I think he does a ton there. It's also just a very silly world, and everyone is allowed to be silly. I want to talk, I guess, for a moment about Bulma,
Mm-hmm.
who I kind of always forget. Like, you know, Bulma's not the most significant character after Dragon Ball ends. She's certainly not the like the one who suffers the least from it. She's still kind of relevant even into like Super.
What happened to Launch?
She's fine. She gave some of her energy to Goku. And she is a funny, entertaining character because she's a shitty teenager. Like, she's
Yeah.
kind of an obnoxious brat, but it's like legitimately funny, and it's entertaining to see like a female character get to be the butt of the joke. She's the butt of too many certain jokes, unfortunately. But she has so much charisma and so much personality. She's just legitimately very fun to sometimes watch. It's sort of like that Nami thing, like, oh, this character does have flaws. Like, she is allowed to be somebody who kind of tries to pull in other characters, but she also just has her own flaws. And her flaws are like, I want a boyfriend. Like, I'm 16 years old, and like, I want to date somebody or whatever. So she falls for guys. And like, even though she knows they kind of suck, she still sometimes does that. And
She knows that the town is being terrorized by an awful person,
yeah,
and who kidnaps women. And she sees them, and they're hot, and she's like, "Oh, hey, how you doing?"
yeah.
And then because Oolong is the person in question, he transforms into something else. She's like, "Oh God,
Yeah.
I forgot he can transform into anything.
Yeah.
I just lost myself."
So, and, you know, she's narcissistic. She's greedy. She has traits that are just great for like creating fun jokes out of. And I don't know. I just really enjoyed when the jokes aren't about a particular thing, which I don't know how much longer we can delay it. But there's a lot that they do with Bulma that I really enjoy.
So to talk about how some elements of Dragon Ball have not aged well, because I think we've beat around the bush twice now, so we might as well get through this.
This bush is right there. We have to. It's in the way.
Toriyama likes fan service jokes. It's very weird to read through them because some of them are just really gross and uncomfortable because they are sexualizing like a 14-year-old. Like, it's and there's a certain point to which I am willing to go and say, well, you know, I guess in a way the joke is that the people around her doing it are dumb kids. But there's only so far that'll get you. And then the dirty old man character Roshi shows up. And then you just kind of go off the deep end with them for every time that they involve him.
Yeah.
But it's very early and very frequent early on. The just fan service jokes happen. There is a thing that happens all throughout Goku's like first adventure, where he's checking the crotch to see if a person is a boy or a girl. Like he just does it, and it's not demonstrated as like, oh, what's with this? What's this? Weird creep doing? He's like, no, he's just like, he's got the innocence of a child, and he's just like, are you a boy or a girl? Check.
Yeah, there's no question. By the way, he doesn't
Nope.
ask. He just starts patting
Nope.
your crotch,
Just
and then it's
or
like,
like kind of taps you with the foot
yeah,
in the crotch. And it did kind of make me wonder, just like, what if he just kind of like did that all throughout the entirety of Dragon Ball Z? Just like, it's like, all right, Cell, I'm gonna get you, you guy, or like just like, it's such a weird thing to imagine like that happening. And I was just waiting for the moment. I was like, when is he going to stop doing it? When does he stop doing this?
unfortunately, it doesn't really.
It takes like 30 chapters.
It doesn't really, like, the series will still remain pretty horny until close to the end, and it kind of eases up a little bit. But as long as there is still kind of like the gag manga element, because that's maybe an element that people wouldn't recognize if you've only experienced Dragon Ball through Dragon Ball Z. I don't know if you'd watch Dragon Ball Z and be like, oh, this is like a comedy. This is like funny. There's funny moments, certainly, and characters do funny things. But that's not really what Dragon Ball Z is about per se. Whereas Dragon Ball is very specifically like a comedy adventure action series, and it leans harder on the comedy side of things earlier on. And
This was the series as well that came out of Toriyama's previous series, Dr. Slump,
yes,
which was a gag series and was also quite successful in its
yes,
own right, even before Dragon Ball came out. Successful enough that apparently Toriyama's editor wouldn't let him end it until he had a new idea for a series, and that's where Dragon Ball came from. And Dr. Slump also shows up very briefly
yes.
in Dragon Ball. Arale, the main character, is in it. Anyway.
So there's an element there that is troublesome, but I don't know. There's a thing. Toriyama was quoted. I don't know if it's a quote from Dragon Ball, but he basically was like, "I loved getting to make a series that made young boys laugh and smile," and like, you do see that. Like, there's a lot of stupid jokes. There's a lot of fart and poop jokes, and like characters just do dumb things. But there's also just like weird jokes that are about like seeing women naked without necessarily their consent. So that stuff isn't awesome. And I guess I don't know how I want to acknowledge it. I guess that it exists. Toriyama eventually does less of it. But
less of it.
There are certain chapters where like, whew, this is uncomfortable. Like,
it's very odd because it feels like the act itself is the joke, and it's not always a matter of like, oh look, a naked or partially naked woman. Because admittedly, Goku gets naked a lot early on. Like,
yeah,
it's just that he's a wild boy who doesn't really care about modesty and stuff, so his pants come off, and he's just like, well, still fighting or still going hunting or whatever, and it's a joke of like, he's got no pants on, that kind of thing. So it is in a way like you would expect certain series that do lean into the fan service comedy nowadays would do things differently in a way that if you did the same situation in them, they would be creepier. For example, is a scene where Roshi does a creepy thing. It's so messed up that I'm not even going to describe it. It's the one where he gets small. But it feels like if that were something that would have happened in a more modern sense, then there would be a more gratuitous shot that would happen.
Sure.
And then you would also have the punchline be that Roshi gets his comeuppance in the same way. But you can have that punchline without there being the gratuitous shot, and that is what happens in Dragon Ball. But the idea is so gross that also that situation, like, you would not get to have in a kid-friendly manga these days.
Yeah.
It's weird.
There are certain things that you're just like, ah, yes. Times were different back then where you could just casually make a joke out of, roofing some people, or whatever. So I don't want to dwell on this too long because I don't want this to act like this is the legacy or anything of it.
No.
I think, a lot more good than bad in Dragon Ball, but it is something to acknowledge. Like, as you read through it, you're like, yes, Dragon Ball, the pinnacle of sports manga, or not sports manga. Yeah, he plays hockey for a little bit. The pinnacle of, battle shonen manga as we traditionally know it. Has one tournament where a fight is solved by Bulma's shirt being lifted up so Master Roshi squirts blood to cover an invisible bad guy so that Yamcha, I think, can beat him or whatever. It's like, yeah, that stuff exists.
So that everyone could go, look, Yamcha won a fight.
Yeah, he did it, guys.
To transition out of the more negative talk, there was just a stretch where I was like, oh man, all this stuff with Roshi is it's getting me down. I don't like being reminded that this is all problematic and stuff. And then Goku starts training with him. And this is also where Krillin, or Kuririn, whatever you grew up with, shows up for the first time, and they're training with him. And he has them doing all this manual labor and stuff. He's having them basically run errands around the local area. And then he tells them, once their training is basically complete, look, there's not much more I can teach you, because everything that my training is about the basics, because my philosophy is about self-improvement. It's not about, martial arts is not about beating your opponent. It is not beating yourself. And, he gives this, especially for this series, very long speech about explaining this philosophy. And I after the end at the end of it, I was like, God damn it, he is a good character. Shit,
Fuck, I hate this. Why do I have to like this fucking dickhead? Now you know my experience when Master Roshi gets his scenes in the Tournament of Power arc, where I'm like, ugh, I hate that this character's had development. It is cool.
And it's really interesting to see Dragon Ball over time come out of being basically just a gag series, but with a running plot, go into being it's more of a martial arts series. Here's where you get the martial arts philosophy, we get the intense training, the tournaments start coming in, and for a stretch of 4 years of publication, 3 tournaments plus the mini tournament where they go to see Baba, which is essentially a tournament, but a much more constrained one.
Yeah.
It's kind of mind-boggling in a sense to be wow, you went through a lot of these really quickly. A lot of series only ever have one tournament and then never do it again, and they can't even finish them. Dragon Ball finished all these tournaments.
Yeah, all these ones ended. And the Tenkaichis also rule. They're not shitty tournaments. Awesome. They're cool. There's some small parts that aren't great, but by and large, there's also really good fights in them. Goku's fight against Tenshinhan is awesome. His fight against Jackie Chun is not only awesome, it's surprisingly long. I was every time I think of it, I think it goes so much quicker than it is, and then I'm like, no, this is 10 chapters. This thing's really long. There's emotional rises and beats and all this sort of stuff. And it does have this weird flow, as you mentioned, where you get all the silly comedy, you get all the goofy stuff, and it slowly transitions. And then whenever Piccolo shows up is the exact moment it kind of turns on a dime, and you're like, now I recognize. If you were familiar only with Dragon Ball Z, you're now I get what this is.
Maybe we can't have jokey jokes now that Krillin's dead. Yeah, and even when it's starting to get more serious prior to that, is just time for those jokes. It's during the second Tenkaichi, where Tenshinhan is the antagonist. The first match of the finals is him against Yamcha, and he knocks out Yamcha, and while he's helpless, fucking breaks his leg.
Yeah.
And it's oh shit, this guy is serious. This is serious revenge martial arts plot right here. And then immediately after that, there is a man wolf that wants to fight Jackie Chun, Roshi in disguise. Why, though? Well, in the last tournament, Goku turns into an Ozoru when he sees the full moon, and so Roshi destroys the moon in order to stop it. And the man wolf is upset because, in the exact opposite case of a wolf man, when he sees the moon, he turns into a regular person, and he can't go and date girls while he's a wolf man, so he wants to get revenge on Jackie Chun. And that is the other weird part of Dragon Ball. For a series that is so wide spanning, has so many different elements, can go back and forth between those so quickly, between serious and wacky. Toriyama also keeps this stuff straight and like does callbacks to stuff. Chi-Chi shows up over 3 years after she has shown up previously when Goku first met her to be his love interest. And it's just like that kind of stuff just happens sometimes where it's like, hey, here's a character that, you know, hadn't shown up for a long time. Here they are again. Yeah. And they're showing up in a way that makes sense and plays off of like stuff that has happened in the meantime. It's one of those things that makes you go, if Dragon Ball is so influential, why doesn't every mangaka do these things?
Yeah, there is a lot of that. There's like a creative flexibility that Toriyama just has that it feels like everyone else is almost like scared to have. They're like, I have to defend this. I have to explain why there's mummy Frankenstein people in this world. I have to explain why there's a terror. Or like, I don't know, Toriyama's just kind of like, I don't know, I just want to draw this crazy ass looking monster. And as we know, as the artist of the Dragon Quest franchise, like, he's great at it. He's great at drawing little freaky monsters or whatever.
Yeah, but at the same time, like in the same sequence where like, the scary monsters and stuff show up, one of the fighters in that contest is Goku's grandpa Gohan. Who's like, oh yeah, well he's visiting from the world beyond because Baba can do that because she's a fortune teller and stuff. It's like, okay, yeah, tie stuff together, get some emotional closure where there really did not need to be any. Gohan had nothing to do with the plot that was going on.
You don't see him at the start. He is dead as the series has begun.
So, yeah.
I had a thought. It's gone.
Sorry.
Nope. Don't apologize. You're beautiful. The character's age. Like, there's modern shonen is like defined by like there's a pre-time skip and a post-time skip. And the times before and after exist in the nebula space. I'm talking mostly about One Piece, but this also kind of follows Bleach, Naruto, Toriko. A lot of series like do a time skip once. Dragon Ball does like 7. Like characters will constantly get older. So by the end of Dragon Ball, Goku is like kind of reaching like young adulthood. He has a love interest, and as we know, Z starts with him having a kid, and that just is rare. Don't talk about Mission Yozakura family. I don't want to hear about it. I get they have kids. It still sounds bad. Something candle compared to the sun. But I like that's something that I do admire. Is just like how like Goku was allowed to kind of get older, and these characters could change a little bit, and their relationships will shift. It's just like, I don't know. It's very satisfying.
Yeah, and through it all, like characters do change. Not it all at once, of course, because that kind of is one of the nice things that can go hand in hand with seeing a character age, not naturally but gradually, comparatively speaking, as your series runs, because and there's the very convenient tent poles that have been set by like, the Tenkaichi happens once every 3 years, so every time in a new term it's like the characters are 3 years older. And you can have that context for how they're behaving differently or they look different. Yeah. And it's not just a matter of like, they got a haircut. Because also one of the nice things is Bulma just changes looks all the fucking time. It's not one outfit change. But like Goku looks essentially the same until he just starts getting taller, basically. But, it's nice to just see that happen, and because as well it makes it feel like the journey matters.
Yeah, absolutely. You do feel like you're a lived part of it as you go through it. And I don't know if we want to start talking about like specific things. We have so many manga to talk about, so I don't want to hold us up
Yeah.
too much longer. But there's a lot of parts that I want to talk more about. I'll simply say I love all of the Tenkaichis. Like those tournaments are like legit some really cool stuff. I love Bulma. I think she's great. I enjoy Yamcha in a way that's like I know what happens to him. I know it doesn't really get better, but there's like a pitying charm to him where you're just like, look at this guy before it all fell apart. Like, look at him when he was at the top.
He thought that he was on the up and up.
He was an antagonist turned anti-hero. He had a sidekick with a cool power. This guy was going places.
I love how simple Goku's training always is. It's just exercise more, man. That's all they have him to. Just exercise more. Just train more. There's very rarely like a secret to it. I love because I mean, like obviously, some of these things are very straightforward, just kind of like martial arts. The secret is inside you, kind of things. But I fucking love them. I love the Korin training where he goes up the tower to see Korin, who supposedly has this magic spring of water that'll make you stronger. But Korin isn't letting him drink it, so he has to chase him around, and he ends up falling off the tower and has to go back up and stuff. And so Korin's like, "You've been getting stronger because you've been exercising up here in this environment where the air is really thin and everything like that. And you climb the tower faster and stuff. So sure." When he finally catches him and gets to drink a drink, he's like, "Well, it's just water." He's like, "Yeah, because you trained, and that's how you get stronger." It's like, yeah, that's like, it's a very straightforward, like, oh, the martial arts series, like, oh, there is no magic thing. It's like you just train and get stronger. But it's so satisfying, like every time that happens. Yeah. It's just nice to see Goku get to take that journey and go along that way. There's something very simple, but it's very easily grasped, but very easily appreciated as well. I also just want to say I love, I think, every competitor in that first Tenkaichi tournament. They're all so weird.
I'm not a huge fan of the girl whose entire combat strategy
even her
revolves around taking her clothes off. I was like, okay.
Even Ron Fan, I kind of like.
But yeah, like, what, Namu, I think, is like...
Nam's awesome.
It's so funny because he has like a sad backstory. He's like the only champion of his village that's slowly dying of thirst, and his backstory is revealed to her. She's like, can't really make a lot of jokes out of you. Like you're kind of bringing the mood down a little bit with your sad backstory.
But he also gets like one of his coolest moments where he's like, water's cheap here. You don't have to like buy a whole ton of it. So here, just freaking have a capsule and fill it up from the well here and take it back to your people. And it's just like, oh, that's nice. And I really like the stuff that Roshi gets up to in that Tenkaichi tournament where he's hiding his identity because he's like, I need someone to beat these kids. I need someone to defeat my child apprentices, because if they just are the strongest fighters around, then maybe they'll lose their motivation. Yeah. And so I need to ensure that someone defeats them. And so he enters himself as Jackie Chun, he defeats Krillin, and then he goes to the Files and beats Goku. And then afterwards, he's like, so let that be a lesson to you. There's always someone stronger, so you've got to not neglect your training. Goku's like, yeah, I know. Maybe I didn't need to do this.
But we'd be robbed of one of the best fights in all of like the Dragon Ball franchise, like including Z and everything else. Like I think that is really like a great fight. God, I want to talk.
One more thing. Sorry, I just really like the setup for the second collection of the Dragon Balls that happens when Goku encounters the Red Ribbon Army. He is just trying to find Grandpa Gohan's 4-star Dragon Ball, because like, this thing was left to me by my grandfather. I just want to go and find it. He doesn't, want to make a wish or anything like that. But in the course of his adventure, I think his name is Uba. I forget now. The somewhat problematic Native American child. His dad is like the guardian of Korin's tower, and he gets killed. and by Tao Pai Pai, who is awesome, awesome villain. And so Goku's like, okay, well, I have to beat the rest of this army, and I should bring this guy back to life because he was a good man who was murdered, and that sucks. So I'm gonna help this guy out, who's my friend. It's just, you know, like he's just wants to just do a nice thing, and he hadn't intended to do that at the start of his journey, so he decides to do it. It's nice.
Yep. It's good noble stuff. I really do want to talk more. We have the 12 manga to talk about in the span of like an hour. So I do need to like condense this down. Let's just say Dragon Ball, I'm going to go off here and take a wild anime take. Is good. It spawned an entire franchise that launched like 1,000 other manga ships because it is genuinely charming and well written. We mentioned there's some parts that don't necessarily hold up. You gotta take those kind of part with it. You know, if you recommend Dragon Ball to somebody, kind of put the big asterisk, like, look, it's gonna be a little weird and horny at the start.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say it gets better. It'll get less.
It'll get less.
It'll get less eventually. But this is a legendary series for a reason. So there's just incredible stuff.
For all the stuff that we've heard about it over the years, for all that, you know, its reputation, and of course the fact that it launched a massive franchise as a result of it, original Dragon Ball does not disappoint. It is actually that good. So yeah, awesome. Now, if you will do me the favor, Quinn, of taking us through Undead Unluck.
Yeah.
We'll start going through our manga recap.
Yeah, I'm going to try to get through this. This is Undead Unluck number 104. Feelings indelible, words unforgettable. So last time, Fang did an attack against the simulacrum versions of Sol and Luna. And Nico's like, awesome, you did it. And Fang's like, nah, these things are actually kind of strong. And he gets fucked up immediately in response. He does survive the blow, but Language is like, I didn't have this guy on my radar before, but I have to kill him before he gets a better grasp on souls, because this could be a very dangerous person. So the situation is basically Nico's like, this looks really bad. What can we possibly do to survive? Because the Sol and Luna didn't go away. They weren't killed. So Fang is like, just heal me. Heal me, and then I'll go in. I have a better understanding of souls now, and I don't know, I'll probably beat them. Who knows? And Ichigo's like, no, I don't think that's going to work. Luna's not someone that you can defeat with like one soul or whatever. Like, I don't think that's going to be how it's going to work. So I think what we need to do is to get Nico to manifest Unforgettable. And we're going to use our lives to do it. So basically they have their 2 words. They're like, all right, here's how it's going to work. And this is all Chico's plan that she's coming up with. She's like, Fang, you're going to use a soul-based technique. And then I will use the second word to help basically give Nico every piece of knowledge he needs. And once that happens, he will become the negator of defeated Language. And Fang's like, well, if I do that technique without healing, though, I'll die. Are you telling me to die? And Nico's like, yeah, this is crazy. Don't do this. We're going to be betting our whole lives on this. This is going to work. And Chico's like, no, I'm positive, Nico, you'll find a way to use this game's rules to bring us back. And Fang is like, oh, this rules? Like,
that I could die, but also survive?
Yeah. He's like, I'm going to get so much stronger from this. This is awesome.
I approve of this plan. All right, go ahead.
Yeah. So he's like, yeah, absolutely do this. This is great. And he just starts coming up with an idea with Ichigo. Like, they start discussing, like, he's like, hey, what letter do you want at the end of your word? She's like, oh, the A, please.
Don't I get a say in this?
Yeah. And Nico's just like, no, you have to listen to me. This is not going to work. There's no telling any of this will work. And Ichigo, in her full ghost form, gives him a big hug and says, don't worry, I know you can do it. And ever the scientist, Nico's like, based on what proof? And she's like, oh, I have proof. I mean, it's no secret I used to only care about science, but you're the first person who has ever won over my heart. And they use the 2 words, Fang is using a big soul wave attack. And for Chico's word, she says apocalypse. And Language hears that and is stunned, but just immediately counterattacks with two things that kind of obliterate Ichigo and Fang. It should be noted that Soul and Luda are both wounded from Fang's soul attack. Like they're missing like one a limb each, but they're still around. And we see like this dark energy start to come over. Language is like, yes, it's manifested. Yes, this is the best. And Nico's just like, that's not fair. Thought you promised you'd never utter those words, and here I thought we wouldn't say it till everything was over. I couldn't forget it even if you told me. Those words, those memories, I've ingrained them into my soul, and we get sort of the one-page unforgettable reveal. And we end with Language saying, "Oh, I'm in love with you all over again, Nico." And he says, "Sorry, I'm already taken."
It's a good line.
Yes.
It is kind of weird to see him manifest back as like the unforgettable Nico that we know with, you know, the deep shadows under his eyes, because I kind of always assumed that was a lack of sleep that did that. Apparently, just like not being able to forget just makes your eyelids saggy. There,
Yeah.
having all of the information of mankind at your fingertips. I love a lot of this stuff. I love how Fang uses the Kamehameha for his true soul wave, and I also love how the image of Luna is behind Ichigo, so it makes her look like angelic as she's floating off away from Nico. It's very, very, very nice looking.
Yeah.
This is an insane plan, and those always work. So
it's good stuff. I love seeing Fang interact with these characters. I love the little speech with Nico. Like, as a scientist, he's like, "What proof will you have this will work?" And she's just like,
"Because I love you."
Basically, yeah. So good stuff. Undead Unluck.
QED. All right, Blue Box.
Blue Box.
Chapter 146, The Feelings Mutual. So, tests happen, and they go well. We very quickly just kind of get a montage of people taking the tests, people getting their grades back. Everyone's looking happy and relieved. Nishida cries when he sees his score, so I think he's okay. And then, you know, like Haru goes to see freaking a counselor to, you know, figure out what he wants to do from this point for his career, for his education, etc. Hey, Chinatsu's also looking over like a thing from Genji University, the place that she's going to be doing a visit with later. But before we get into all that, you know, life and plans stuff, there's a summer festival that's going to happen, and again, all these young kids are going to be trying to have a good time. So we first catch up a bit with Hina, who is being wacky. She's doing stretches, but she's also like bowing in thanks. It's very weird. It's like, all right, so we got the fireworks festival. And everyone's doing practice and everything like that. Chinatsu has actually rejoined her basketball team and is practicing with them, so her ankle seems to have healed. And then, as they're wrapping up, Ayame is like ordering everyone around, like, "Come on, everybody, clean up! I gotta go ready for the festival. Everyone, clean up fast now!" And she's rushing by Kyo. So he says, like, why are you in such a hurry? And she's like, "Today's a fireworks festival, and, you know, I'm a girl. Girls have to do a lot to prepare. I gotta get home. I gotta shower. I gotta do my hair. I gotta do my makeup. I gotta put on my yukata." It's like, yeah. So if you're not gonna get all dolled up, Kyo, don't judge. All right.
Yeah. Why don't we go home and see what Kyo's skincare routine is going to look like, you know? He's like, I was just going to put on a New Japan Wrestling t-shirt and head on out there.
Just going to not shave, just show up as is. Kyo makes the comment like, "Oh, you're going to wear a yukata." And there's a brief moment where Ayame is like looking at him like, and then she's, "You get to see nothing. Don't look at me like that." She's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna get together with Hinachi and Nina, which is such an unfortunate nickname, Nina. But she asks like what his plans are, and he says, "Oh, I'm gonna be going with my family." She's like, oh, nice. Yeah, you've got those three little ones to look out for and stuff. And Kyo's like starts talking about his siblings fondly and stuff. And it's cute because it's like, oh, Ayame, like you're interested in him and his
Yeah.
family and stuff. Come on. But when while Kyo's talking about this, she's just thinking to herself like, well, he looks the happiest when he's talking about his siblings. Oh, honey. Aw. So she rushes off to keep on cleaning, and as she departs, there is also someone who's like, "Why are you in a hurry? I'm my yukata. You're gonna wear yukata. You get to see nothing." I hope that happened like 3 more times.
Yeah, this was her running gag for the day.
It's a good running gag. Yeah. Kyo gets home, and when he does, he sees Saki, his childhood friend. And so he's like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" And she's like, "Oh, I used to go with you like every year." And it turns out that like her parents are just like going ahead and they're gonna save them a spot. So she's gonna hang out with them, and she like bends down to fix one of Kyo's little siblings, like his pants, and are kind of like dragging on the ground. So she like tucks them into his shoes. And Kyo's like, "Oh, your skirt got dirty when you did that," and she just goes, "Oh, typical Kyo, you notice everything." No, love triangle alert! No,
Oh, no.
We don't need those. But Kyo, very interestingly, thinks about Ayame in this moment and how he had told her like, "Oh, I'm going with my family," and I was like, and now it feels like I lied to her.
Yeah.
Aww. That's kind of cute. Then we get, honestly, my second favorite joke of this chapter, which is Taiki gets a festival mask and is like, "This way, no one will tell it's me right away."
Fair enough. I wouldn't expect it.
I saw upon him immediately. I was like, "You've got spiky black hair and you're wearing a white polo shirt."
I was
You're
gonna
the
say,
only one who looks that way.
I think it's the cross shoulder bag that it feels like he's always wearing that really reveals him.
But yeah, so he's like, "Huh, yeah, this is like the first time that we're like going on an actual date." And then he's like, "I hope it don't smell." You could have also gotten ready, Taiki.
Yeah.
Put on some deodorant. But he does say like, "Oh, I showered before coming here and stuff." So he's just like really nervous because it's a first date, and we get just the full moment where he spots Chinatsu in the crowd, and like his vision zooms in on her just before she turns, and there's this very cute 2-page spread of her. She's in her yukata, she's got her hair done up and stuff, and she spots him looking at her, and comes over and she's like, "Oh, I didn't recognize you with the mask on," and she realizes that he's blushing. And then she starts to blush, so she snatches his mask and puts it on to hide her embarrassment.
That's very cute. Yeah. Yeah, this is a fun little chapter. I like how this chapter sort of transitioned us from like all of the tournament drama and everything, and like kind of time skipped us a little bit forward. I was like terrified for a moment. I thought we were getting to like the end of the year. We're not quite that far. But it is definitely when I'm like, oh no, Chinatsu's time at this school is very rapidly coming to an end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we got from spring into summer very quickly with this transition. But it will be basically, I guess, like the last thing that Chinatsu will really have in high school will be that winter tournament that they remind us of is coming up in the future, because there'll be that, and then nationals if she makes it. And I think that's just going to like take her through the end of her tenure.
Yes.
So, we do have a Boruto chapter this week, Quinn.
Everyone's favorite series.
Everyone's favorite series. Boruto Two Blue Vortex, Chapter 9, 9 Tails. Oh. All right. A long conversation happens that is between the bad guys and little kid ninjas from Konoha, which they are actively invading, including Himawari, who is apparently the vessel of the Nine Tails presently. And they tell them repeatedly, we don't need to fight you guys. We just want her because she's got the Nine Tails. And they're like, what are you talking about? Explain yourself. And they're like, why? Why does this take so long? Why are you being so hospitable about this? It's so weird. Anyway, he summons a tree to just grab Himawari. They team 9 or whatever the fuck number they are. They all use their weird Team Inashika powers to pull her free from it and catch her. And the others are just like standing there, but they're like, "Oh, what coordination?" It's like, what? Punch them out! They're children. Knock them unconscious and take her. What are you doing? You're the bad guy. Stop it. A longer conversation happens over like telepathy with the communication ninjas. And Boruto is informed that, they've made a move by Kashin Koji. And so he's like, okay, well, I've just left Konoha. I guess I better go back. Oh, this is fantastic freaking scripting right here. Just like, I got away. Time to go back. What are you doing? Just have this happen while he's there. God. So they say, like, you've got Nine-Tails Chakra. Nine-Tails Chakra? No, there's no way you can have Nine-Tails Chakra. Why are they after you? We've got to devour you. Why? Why are they here? Just talking. This whole chapter could have been a third as long if you would just not have all this conversation that is establishing details that are obvious if you just look at the images that are being drawn. Yes. Speaking of images that are being drawn, frickin' Kawaki runs into Boruto while he's on his way to go and help, his little sister. And Boruto calls him a fool and stuff. Kawaki throws miniaturized spikes that grow at him. And Boruto goes, sidestep. And then Kawaki goes in with a giant claw thing coming from the left side of the panel, turn the page, he's now on the right side of the panel, and Boruto has just hit him. It flows in the most awkward way possible because you have to go from the bottom of the page to the top of it, and they've switched positions.
Yes.
Who did this? I know who did this. You're credited as the illustrator of the series. God. So, he punches Kawaki, who goes, and Boruto's like, pitiful. Haven't you been training at all? Why is this guy the antagonist? Why is he the rival? He sucks. He's not interesting or intimidating. God. Their karmas start resonating, and one of the frogs is like, Boruto, you've got to put distance between you two because you're resonating and you're going to lose control. So Boruto goes, flies away, which he can do as a ninja. And so Kawaki's like, he can't control his karma. Frickin' Inojin summons a bird creature with the Sai illustration powers. And Shikadai tries to stop the bad guys with his shadow paralysis thing, and the guy just goes and summons a black ball of energy to attack him, and it explodes. And so Shikadai is flying, not Shikadai, Inojin is flying away with Himawari to safety, but then Shikadai goes, Inojin, Chocho and I need a lift. So he goes back to the fight that they were just rescuing Himawari from, and picks them up and flies them away, and nobody stops them. There's so much turning around and going back to people that we're escaping from in this chapter. They talk more. Eventually, they're like, why is this happening? And Himawari is like, I should escape on my own. Why? Well, because there's speed lines everywhere, so we're going very fast right now, clearly. There's no background.
That's how you know.
But she's worried that they're going to get caught or hurt trying to protect her. And it's like, why? These 3 children basically beat the bad guys of the series in this fight and got you away without getting scratched. But then, as she's like, they're too strong, she goes into her internal world. And she's surrounded by, like, clear water everywhere. And she's like, where am I? And Tiny Ninetales, Ninetale babies. They make your dreams come true. She's like, do you know who I am? And she's like, yeah, you're Ninetales. Yes, I guess. Why did he ask that?
He's
Anyway.
like, that's a little derogatory just because I've got 9 tails. Fuck you. My name is Chet.
Nice to meet you.
Like, I'm so sorry, Chet. Just call me 9 tails. That's what everyone else calls me. Yeah. How long do you see? Like, you know what? Fuck it. We have too many series to talk about. I want to sit here and like wax philosophic on like, oh, what do you think this means? Himawari will take a larger role in the second part of Boruto, or is this going to be like some way of Kurama getting back to Boruto or something like to make him cooler? And then I'm like, you know what? I don't care right now.
All right. Whew. Okay. Chainsaw Man.
Yeah.
Chapter 163, Dream Balls. I was so confused.
Speaking of
the
time
first time I read
skips.
this. So last time they were getting Chainsaw Man out of the facility. Turns out Chainsaw Man's Denji. What a revelation. And then Quan Chi came in and was like, I'll fight you. But then turns out, no, just want to fuck with Chainsaw Man. So she instead was like, I'll let you guys like kill me. And then we cut away just before that happened. And then they're watching TV, and what is on TV has nothing to do with the plot. It is a celebrity scandal that none of them have anything to do with. And one of the members of the Devil Hunter Club is watching it and sweating profusely because he is so into this celebrity gossip story. Okay.
Sure.
And they just say after 4 pages of establishing this, like, oh yeah, everyone's so concerned with this date with a married baseball player that no one cares about like this conspiracy theory thing that's going on, I guess. Okay.
I mean, it makes sense. It does kind of show a bit of the context of this world, which is like, I mean, it's not, Fujimoto is holding a mirror up to us at this point. We, are existing in a world where there's a lot of bad things happening, and very frequently the news is dominated by, nonsense. And that's what this is showing. Like, yes, crazy things are happening. Not only did high schoolers break out, but there was a town where people just started turning into chainsaw monsters and killing people. And that's also not on the news. Everyone's just like, I hope this celebrity didn't have an affair.
But what does this have to do with Taylor Swift going to the Kansas City Chiefs game? That's all that we want to know right now. So, so they're kind of talking about that and like, wow, no one's reporting on this. And then Asuka's like, yeah, I was kind of famous for a little bit too. Now no one remembers me, and I lost an arm. It's the most permanent arm loss I feel like we've had on this show since the last arm loss in Chainsaw Man.
What I like is like, it feels like how a character would react after they lost a limb, which is they bring it up constantly. This, like, we have seen Asa since she's lost her arm, and I think she has mentioned it like 4 times since then. It's not been that long.
Give me a break. I lost an arm.
Yeah.
And then they have Denji in a safe place. He is still unconscious, but they have succeeded in putting him together and revving his heart, it seems, because he is all in one piece. And Asa's just like, man, Denji's Chainsaw Man. That doesn't feel real. The Nail Devil is there and says like, this kid kind of looks cute when he's asleep. Yep. And then they go like, so isn't your companion taking too much time in the bath? It's like, well, this is Fami's hideout, so take your complaints to her. Fami is eating. She's got dishes that don't really go together, and she's just eating them by hand. Eating spaghetti by hand,
she's having a great day.
Yeah. And not the way that like you're supposed, quote unquote, to eat spaghetti by hand, where you like, dangle it.
Yeah.
The most inefficient way possible. And then
it hasn't been mixed either, so she's really like,
no.
I don't know. There's plenty that I'm like, I think she's just eating raw ass noodles.
So as they're kind of just like watching Fami eat for a little bit, suddenly Denji wakes up, looks right at Asa, goes, "Where's your arm?" Oh, he noticed.
Yeah.
Then he realized like he's in a strange place. And then they're like, "Oh my god, what's going on?" Nail Devil goes, "You were more my type when you were asleep. Go back to sleep," which is a great comment. And then again, Denji's like, "What happened to your arm?" Asa says, "Your friend cut it off." Why? I don't know. Am I dreaming? Stop to the balls!
That's the best part. It's such a great like page turn. Am I dreaming? Wham!
It turns out Samurai survived. Getting his head cut off. He's a devil. He's a weapons devil. They do that. And he's like, that's the best post-bath moment of my life. And he's like, I returned both your balls to where they belong in your ball sack, so I could ring the gong of revenge with my own foot. Now turn into Chainsaw Man. Fucking love this guy now. He's so weird. Asa says, like, hey, that wasn't the deal. We agreed that we would only fight after we'd explained everything. And one of the Devil Hunter Club's like, yeah, he's Chainsaw Man, show some respect. Then Asa turns into Yoru, who kicks Tenchi in the balls. And she's just like, I don't need your human form. Turn to Chainsaw Man. And that's basically where we end the chapter. So
yeah,
good to have you back, Denji.
Yeah, this is a funny one. I mean, that's what Chainsaw Man has been very recently. It's like, hey, this is like serious stuff, but also very funny. And I don't know. I'm very curious to see where this goes. There's so many like moving pieces in this series right now, and I mean that in the best way. Like every time something happens in this series, I'm like, ooh, well, what about this person? Is this thing still out there? Is this going to be relevant? Like there's a lot of explosive factors in this room right now. So it should be very interesting to see what happens. Speaking of interest to see what happens, Nick, Kaiju number 8's B-side.
Oh, are we going to cover this? Okay.
We might as well just cover it real quick.
She uses her axe.
Yeah, there's not much. She uses the axe. It was strong enough. There's a cool color page in there if that's your jam. Yes. But she decides, she's like, I think I'll use the axe.
I started watching the Kaiju number 8 anime. I forgot what a massive jerk Hikaru is at the beginning.
Yeah, she's real soon. Here she gets a little kitty face at the end, though. So,
She does, yeah.
Different sides of things. All right, Nick, let's talk about Eden Zero, Chapter 285, 0 versus 1. This is going to be very quick. It looks like Void is down for the count, but he just is stronger, so he charges something up, and there's a huge fleet of ships that shows up behind the Eden's 1, and they're like, oh no, we're done for, we're gonna get killed, they're firing at us. But everyone shows up. Everyone who's ever been in this series that has any kind of military force shows up. The Erasion 6 Interstellar show up. Fucking Hamora's mom shows up, and Hamora gets a little moment where she wakes up and just goes, Mother. She doesn't know she's out there, so whatever. Shura shows up, Draken Joe shows up, everyone shows up with their ships in the same worthless battle, and then Ziggy's like, I have to kill you. I gotta take you out of this world. I brought you into it. So he and the Eden Zero both fire these very powerful laser beams, and it looks like Void has been killed. He like straight up gets like disintegrated into pieces. So
he says, we're going back to the Void of Zero.
Yeah. Not good. Not gonna lie. Not good. In another week, I might spend more time talking about how all this sucks, but we have so little time. So
it is definitely very awkward to have all these characters from the past show up, and it's just like, well, they're just in ships.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them you don't associate with being in ships.
I was like, I guess Kurenai is a like leader of a like city or something like that, or I don't know, maybe even a planet. So I guess she would have a military, but
yeah, this is our all the allies show up moment. It feels very forgettable. I'm sure that if you are into Eden Zero, you would probably look at this and go like, "Oh, and everyone's here." But honestly, the execution of it just seems very just it's done to be done. It
Yeah.
feels like, and it's just more like spaceships and stuff. And Eden Zero has really struggled to make space encounters of this sort interesting.
Yep. It's not interesting. Void sucked as a bad guy. Let's move on to better things.
Astro Royale, Chapter 2, Astro. So Hibaru, who had developed a weird ability, made his arm turn all black with patterns on it, wakes up. What was his name? Was it Subaru? Something like that? It was his brother. Has been Terasu has been watching over him, and he's been out for like 2 weeks following the big explosion of power. You know, it's so that he can be unconscious while all the different factions are like gathering and like doing stuff, and the situation is changing without having to explain what he was doing in that time. He was asleep there. The Yotsuruki family headquarters has been taken over by the family's Hawk faction, and they have essentially started a monopoly on all of the survival supplies. And so people can't get food or medical care or anything like that. And they all desperately need it because, you know, the world has just collapsed. And they run into as well the candy shop guy that Hibaru quote unquote collected collection money from before all this. It turns out that a bunch of members of this faction also have powers, the same powers that, of course, Hibaru has. One of them goes to see Shio, who is the guy that looked like he was going to take over if it wasn't Hibaru. And of course, he is the leader of this faction. He's got an ability which is some sort of telekinesis because he is manipulating like some debris in a figure eight pattern in the air. And so the guy who goes to see him says like, "Oh, they say that Ibarra is alive," and he says in response, "Things were looking grim for me when the old man's will was announced, but then this disaster happened, and the gods chose me. Tell everyone that Hibaru and Terasu died in the meteor strike. That's the story." Okay, so maybe not the best guy right now.
Now, I'm a little surprised because I thought this guy would be saved for a little bit later, but it
Yeah,
does feel like they're making him sort of the antagonist right out the gate.
we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
Hibaru and Terasu go in to encounter all the guys for, you know, hoarding supplies and not helping people. And they're like, "All right, fine. I'm going to have to kill you with this power." And one of them steps forward and he's like, "I was holding onto this dagger when I wished on the shooting star so I could kill people with my bare hands." And he's got a really cool blade arm, like a bunch of blades, including a massive one, come out of his arm. And he's like, "We're important now." It's really funny. And they're like, "Yeah, this is a power called Astro." Sure, whatever you want to call it. It comes from space. Fine. What? Another one of the guys is like, "I was holding on to these, you know, grip exercisers, and I made a wish to have, you know, be invincible then, essentially. So I've got this awesome steel shell." And so, you know, they attack Hibaru. He dodges back, and he's like, "Oh, so that's where this power came from." Gets his bullet arm out, and he's like, "All right, take this." Punches the steel shell guy right in the stomach, and he goes, "Ah!"
Oh shit!
Big bug-eyed expression, very nice 2-page spread. Launches the guy like into space. It looks like in the brief shot that we get, and he's like, "All right, who's next?" And they're like, "Oh, we're gonna get you." It's like, one of you guys has a blade on your arm. Why don't you fight him?
Yeah. Like, no, that sounds, no, I don't want to do that.
A fair fight? No. So Hibaru strikes this cool pose with his arms crossed and stuff, and he's like, "Give Shio a message for me. Tell him to stop picking on civilians and come settle this man to man, because Hibaru Yotsurugi will take him on anytime, day or night." And hey, he's a big hero to all the people outside. You know, he's being a good Yakuza the way he wants to. And then they're like, "Oh, what should we do with all the supplies?" And so he just, you know, turns to the crowd, opens up a big storage room, and he's like, "Hey, everyone, stock up on what you need." And they're like, but how can we repay you? This must be expensive, right?" And Hibaro goes to the old man and he's like, "Hey, Gramps, give me my usual." Gives him the one piece of candy he always likes that's got, like Doraemon on it. And he's like, "All right, that's more than enough payment." That's very sweet and cute.
That is cute. I like the chapter to chapter callback is nice.
So, yeah, just a very straightforward extension of like, hey, other people have these powers. There's going to be fights like this. It's pretty simple stuff, but the artwork's done well. The character dynamics do continue to look interesting as we get more of them revealed. And it's just nice to see that continuation of like, hey, here's what our protagonist is going to act like as the hero of this series.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed this chapter. I like this expanding of things. I like that we haven't immediately busted out whatever the friend's power is going to be yet. Like we're still holding on to that a little bit.
Yep.
I don't know. Things are just looking good for this series right now.
Yep. So let's go from there to Greens.
Hell yeah.
Chapter 20, Gains. So Oga has just done her first drive of the tournament. So she's looking good. We're introduced to the people that she is in a group with that she's going to actually be playing directly alongside as the tournament progresses. Toka Yamashita and Botan Dewa. And Yamashita is like very like friendly and over the top, and Dewa is kind of like very much more like confrontational ice queen.
Yes.
So very contrasting styles there for her rivals in this, and they're both like very skilled. They've got a lot of accomplishments. Yamashita was a national champion when she was in junior high, so big resumes for Oga to be going up against. And so Haku's like, why are you excited? It's like, because I'm all fired up, and all of them are thinking that the winner will be me. It's just nice to see that.
Yeah.
We just kind of like get a quick, progression of stuff. Oga gets a birdie early on. Yamashita's like, "Hey, good job, Oga," and Dewa's like, "Why are you cheering her on?" And she's like, "Her doing well won't affect how I play." It's like, yeah, that's kind of golf. So
yeah, I do like the level of like, we don't have to be assholes here.
But Dewa's like, I am choosing to be.
Yes. I understand we don't have to. I am making that decision.
Yeah, I do love the exchange that they have afterwards, because Yamashita's like, "I'll cheer for you too, Dewa." And she's like, "Who needs encouragement? I'm pretty strong as is." Like, all right.
Chill out.
So yeah, stuff keeps on going as Haku is, observing it all, and he's like, "This is like what Rio competition is like. How you're always trying to go for the best strategy, follow it as precisely as possible. That's how you achieve flawless golf. Even the smallest differences, you couldn't even call them flaws, like landing just a little closer to a tree, the ball bouncing just a little too far. Those small disparities are what make all the difference." And this is like visualized by Dewa being like on a level literally below Oga as they're progressing along the course, using the topographical features to illustrate your point. That's nice.
Yeah.
And there's, of course, just all this pressure. And so Haku's just thinking to himself, like, man, it feels like if I were out here, I couldn't even like breathe properly. If I were to hit my best shot there, it would probably feel amazing. So he feels all the intensity, all the pressure, and he's like, that would be so fun. So that's nice. And eventually they get to the 8th hole. So a little less than midway through the round, and it's 330 yards to the hole, and there is a far bank that is, or rather, there's about a little over halfway down that path, there is a pond that they've got to circumnavigate. So it's like, okay, so the main strategy is like, okay, you should stop short of the pond so that then you can easily get past it on your next shot while also navigating around the other obstacles and stuff. And Haku thinks to himself, like, yeah, Oga's driver was about 250 yards, but the pond's like 217 yards. So if she lands short, then she'll be in great position like the two of them are as well. But then Oga thinks for a second, she goes, Did you two know that risking it all is actually pretty fun? Thanks to a certain someone, I recently came to that realization. I'm going to go on ahead. My driver! So cool. And so Haku gives her her driver and she belts it. So such a cool shot that the
Yeah, no, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. Even before like that sort of like 1.5 page spread of it, there's just a shot of her like very shadowed and serious and contemplative, and I'm like, fuck, I like that she's just allowed to look cool in this moment. Like she's allowed to be a badass.
the way that her eyes look, accentuated by being between her cap and the sleeve of her on her arm on her follow through. So cool
Framed
looking.
by the sound of her hitting the ball.
Yeah. Draws your attention straight into her eyes because she's so focused. And she gets past the pond on a shot that she wouldn't normally be able to do. And of course, as they're doing this, like both her opponents, like, feel the pressure from that. And Oga's, like chanting in her mind, I can fly anywhere.
Hell yeah.
Ah!
Hell yeah. This is so cool.
And then it happens. The last page of the chapter, Haku approaches and is like, okay, I'll take your club. And Oga passes it back to him with her left hand. He's like, oh, sorry. And then he realized, like, I thought that she'd been passing them to me with her other hand before. And Oga just thinks to herself, there are 11 holes remaining. I won't let anyone get in front of me. And she's removing her glove with her teeth, not with her right hand. What happened? Are you hurt, Oga? What?
Oh, no.
Don't run an injury angle now. No.
Yeah. We're very curious to see what we have. But this is awesome. Green Green Greens continues to be an exceptionally fun series with a lot of just great, cool sports moments. This is really, really good stuff. Don't look at the rankings. Just don't. Enjoy this while you can.
The first volume of the series is just coming out. That's probably going to be the thing.
Yes, if that sells well, then maybe, but
we'll see. All right. So we don't have a lot of time to dedicate to the new series, Kyokuto Necromance. This is by the same creator as Aliens Area, which
I was wondering why this looked like dog shit.
It's
I shouldn't
honestly,
say that. No, that is me.
Better.
I do want to take that back. That is not the way to do that. It is a very distinct art style. I'm sorry, I was a bad person there.
Also, I think it looks better than Aliens Area. There's just like a lot more interesting visuals that seem to be going on in this. We're introduced to our main character, Kaoru Uno, and his grandmother, Umeko, and she's like his only family. His mother, has been gone for like his whole life. My dad left behind this ring before he died, and it's a ring that Kaoru always wears. His grandmother collapses it one day when they get home, and when he looks over her, he sees these weird balls with spikes and teeth and eyes, and they're creepy looking. Mm-hmm. So he kind of assumes that he's just like seeing things, gets her to the hospital. She's okay afterwards and stuff, and he realizes like, oh, she's just kind of like, this has been happening a lot lately. He is reluctant to go to school the next day, but when he gets there, there's a crowd gathered around this tall, long-haired guy, very creepy looking, and he just keeps on making all these weird comments like, my coffee has long since gotten cold. It's like, all right. So, why is everyone gathered around him? Because he's a novelist who went viral a while ago.
Ah.
All right. His name is Yoji Amane, and he's like, oh, yeah, I'm here for you as part of my day job. He's like, well, why? Anyway, he makes a lot of weird comments. Honestly, I don't want to go over them because we're short on time, and they're very specific and weird. But honestly, it does get across the idea of like, this guy is like a weird, eccentric, antisocial socialite. It's odd.
Yes.
Like he doesn't seem to have a problem operating in public spaces, but he's clearly annoyed by a lot of aspects of things that he does willingly and enthusiastically. It's weird. Eventually, he's like, "Hey, let's go have some tea together." And Kaoru's like, "I've got to go to school." "Nope, come on,
Let's do it. Yeah.
let's go. Get in my car. Get in my car." Stranger who I'm taking from their school without protest. All right.
Sure.
So they get in the car, and he's like, "Hey, so I'm here to actually protect you and your grandmother and get your ring." "What, this ring? Why are you wearing that ring?" "I see. Your dad put it on you." It's just an odd time to do a time cut. But he is like, "Okay, so check it out. I can't explain the ring without explaining Shiryo. When you look at someone next to you who's touching a Shiryo, if you see it and think, maybe there's something there, you're in the clear." Then the pages stick together in this digital manga until eventually one of them attacks. So I don't know I don't remember what happens here. So I can't get my issue of Jump to work. Uh, uh, so a big, giant, spiky, creepy thing, like a fully adult version, basically, of Kaoru's grandmother. They run into her, by the way. She's just out and about, and a bunch of like these weird things come bursting out of her mouth, including a really huge one. And it like takes something and is out of her body and is going to eat it. And so Kaoru starts like being like, "Get your hands off her," and starts punching it, and it punches him and knocks him off of a bridge. Except not. He just hits his head on the railing. He's fine. He's just bleeding heavily. And he's like, "Oh no, I'm gonna die." And then the thing goes to pull the thing out of his grandmother again, and it looks kind of like a Matryoshka doll.
Yeah, I was gonna say it looks like a little figure.
And so he realizes that that's important, does Kaoru. He's like, "Oh, there's no room for me to be afraid." And he jumps down to attack it again. And this time, as he goes to punch it, the ring on his fist glows with a dark aura, and he explodinates the thing's head. And after he has done this, he remembers the things that his father told him while putting the ring on him, which was, "This will stand in for me. The ring will protect you." And a strange figure has appeared next to Kaoru as he's done this. And so, yeah, he's like, "Look, I can't protect you or your grandma. The men of the Uno family are fated to be plagued by things called Shiryo, which is our ancestors' fault." All right, weird comment to me. But he's like, "Yeah, so I can't protect you. Sorry." And Kaoru's like, "Don't worry, I'll protect us." And he's got this power now. The thing regenerates after being punched. And so he's like, "Oh, how do I deal with it?" And then suddenly, like, it's chopped in half because Amane has shown up to deal with it. And he's like, "Yeah, so you tried to exterminate the thing, didn't you?" "Well, I tried to protect my grandma. What's so weird about that?" Okay, yeah, all right. And then he calls out a spirit Chitari and says, "Time to feast." And this small girl that has very insectoid antenna comes out of his weapon, I guess, just kind of like grows out of it next to him and is like, "All right, time to feast." And he says, "This is how you deal with these Shiryo, basically with other Shiryo. You cut them apart, get their soul out, and have them eat it, and have another one eat it." And he cuts this thing apart, and this thing has like a little doll, just like Kaoru's grandmother did. And he says to Chitari, "All right, soul snack for you." She fucking eats it, and yeah, that's it. He's like, "That's how necromancers deal with these things." And your dad was an old work friend of mine, I guess. So he hands him a business card, and he's like, "Yeah, your dad put in a request for my agency to protect you." And Kaoru's like, "This is weird." Like, yes, this is. But Kaoru says, "I think that he gave me this ring because I was going to need to protect myself and my grandmother on my own, not with your guys' help, basically." But Amane remembers a conversation he had with Kaoru's father, which was like, "I want you to take care of my son as my final request." And Amane's like, "All right, good point." And Kaoru's like, "Hey, why don't you let me work at your agency? I'll be a necromancer. Parentheses, so that I can get strong enough to actually protect myself and my grandmother." Fair enough. So there we have it. It is another Exorcist series, basically.
Yeah.
There are some nice visuals to how some of this stuff works. I think it's nice to have the very, it's, what's the term, like kind of toyetic kind of feel, like, oh, and there's a little figure that comes out of them that then gets eaten and stuff. There's also kind of a Gash Bell kind of thing to it as well, this needing a partner to fight them thing.
There's elements in here that make not necessarily that are like unique, but act as like intriguing elements for a battle manga. Like you kind of just want those things that like stick out, that are very like tangible. I mentioned last week with Astro Royale, like how everyone has an item that they hold on to. It's just one of those things that's like, I don't know, like I almost want to say like it gives texture or something like that. It just it satisfies the brain in a way. Like kind of like
you want a totem to be associated there.
Yeah,
it's like how when someone transforms into Kamen Rider thing, you want them to have a morpher of some kind.
Sure, it's one of those things like when you play a board game and you're like, oh, I just like touching the pieces. Like there's like tactile, I guess is maybe the word I was looking for. There's like some kind of just innate feeling. You're like this tickles a part of my brain. It makes it feel better. Then it's just a better element than if the spirits were there, but it just didn't have that same like the little toy and all that sort of stuff. So.
Yeah. So far, I would say this is okay, but nothing about it really stands out yet, except that Amane's a weirdo, but he's not really weird in an entertaining sense, at least yet. So I don't really have feelings either way on this. We'll see if it gets, more interesting or not.
Yeah. Good stuff. Now, Nick, we have to move on to New Exorcist.
Yeah, we do.
You didn't say that with enthusiasm, which is weird because this might be the best chapter of New Exorcist yet.
Are we sure about that? It's chapter 47.
Yeah, Nick, this is like a solid 5.5 out of 10.
Senpai is such an adult. All right, so let's check out this best series chapter of New Exorcist.
It doesn't start off on a good note, Nick.
By recapping the boob grope from last.
It doesn't start off on a good note. It's after
that.
Then
we start as you mean to go on.
I love it because the Gakura has a very Quinn-coded moment where he's just like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'll bring some rope. You better tie me up. It's just like, all right, this feels like you're trying to work this in, bud.
Oh, no. I brought my dog costume so I can dress in it while you demean me. Penitence.
I accidentally touched you. You should spank me with this paddle. Like, what? Like, no, it's what I deserve. I definitely hate this, so if you could just get on with that.
I'm such a naughty baby. You better put this down with me. Anyway, Suo's response to all of this is just like, hey, I guess that I also got carried away. Let's just go to sleep. Translation, forget about it. Let's just move on. But she rolls over to go to sleep, and Gakura thinks to himself like, oh man, how did she let me off so easy? Senpai is such an adult. Cut over to Suo, who's being like, oh my god, grab my tit. Which is, admittedly, is like, that transition is like, okay,
sure.
that's
There's something. Yeah.
Koga, the short girl who was at the beach from that one training arc, has shown up to cook breakfast for them, and she's just like, oh, I was suddenly transferred to the 6th branch along with Machida and Sujita.
The other girls that you know in this manga are also a part of this branch.
All right. They're part of the division too.
I'm going to make this call right now. I'm never going to remember these characters anytime they show up.
I will remember Koga because her design is the most unique out of all of them.
Sure.
Well, she's got like the weird loop in her
loop-de-loop. Yeah, she has hair that you could roll a Hot Wheels down and it'll stay in perpetual motion forever.
I just wanted to like start doing gifs of like weird anime hair and like the Hot Wheels track you can make out of them.
There's some Yu-Gi-Oh characters that could get some real hair off their hair. Yeah.
I mean, by Zexel, everyone's got 2 tracks. Like
they actually connect like little PlayStations and Hot Wheels as well. If a couple Zexel characters connect together, they'll race around.
Sorry, I'm just remembering that the sound that those would make. Um, so anyway, Koga is showing up in order to cook breakfast for them in this space that just the two of them are in together and have to stay in. All right. So it just feels like it defeats the purpose of it partially.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they eat breakfast, and Koga says we're more suited for support than for combat, which was why we had a spirit elimination contest with you guys before.
No, Nick. Maybe I was speaking too highly when I said this is the.
Oh, really?
We're only 5 pages in. Maybe these 5 pages are maybe these 5 pages are dog shit, but the rest of it's gold.
So Koga's like, oh man, I was surprised that you guys are just like living together. I didn't think that you would live with another guy again, Kazusa. Oh, what's this? Backstory? And she's like, oh, I shouldn't have brought that up. Sorry. So, Suo like kind of like lightly scolds her. And then again, it's just like, it's okay. You made us breakfast. You're forgiven. Anyway, I gotta go train and stuff. We get to actually see some of her training, which is surprising, honestly. That being said, we see all the training that all 4 of them are going through now. All of them are stupid. Like, it's just basic ass shit. Like, defeat these spirits. Fine.
Sure.
Suo says, defeat these spirits. Like, you defeated 78 level 2s yesterday, but you need to defeat 100. But, like, not all at once. It just has to be, like...
I mean, why wouldn't you do all at once?
It's like achievements, and it's like achievements in in a daily. It's like you don't have to do them all in one game, So.
Oh yeah, imagine if this was daily. So like, Gakuro, if you could log in, fight the 3 monsters, and then actually your training's done for the day, but you've accrued a couple reputation faction points. So at the end of a couple months, we're gonna get you a nice little shirt.
You can always advance more if you're willing to pay the premium entry fee. But also the premium entry fee only gives you the battle pass, so all of your benefits will expire after the end of the month.
Yeah.
And of course,
you'll lose access to your cosmetics.
A new tier gets unlocked after that. So,
considering how stupid we've coded Nue is, I would not be shocked if that ends up being how this ends up working. God, I don't know why. I know we have so little time. I don't know why, but I physically felt myself recoil a little bit at the idea that one day we are going to get a manga character who does refer to some type of training as a battle pass.
Absolutely. We cut over to Shiroa's training. I mean, we're told, like, you've got to strengthen your hollow weapon. Makes sense. Sure. Kyokatsu, your bond, blah, blah, blah. There's one way to forcefully draw out their power. And she, I guess, is just gonna essentially... fight her Bankai, basically. That seems to be what's going on. We're told stuff about how Kyokatsu is able to manifest 70% of his real body's abilities within Nue space, and so Shiroha must make him bring all of that out.
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
And she's fighting him.
Again, right. I thought this guy died, so whatever.
Shitatsu is fighting Kathy. I don't remember this character. Is this a character?
She's she's like the lowly girl who showed up for breakfast a couple times, I think.
Right. She's been there. Right.
Sure.
Okay. All right. She has been there. So Shitatsu's fighting her. I guess she has a mouth. She summons a big mouth, big vertical mouth, and also a bunch of eyes and stuff.
Yeah, she made a mouth out of her face.
It is
whole face.
It's a mouth. It is the most interesting visual in this chapter. I wish it took place in more than 1/3 of this page.
Sure. I think it's also interesting. There is some sort of suggestion in Kathy's words that like there might be something unique to Shitotsu.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, her eyes go black and stuff, and she's getting set to train and stuff.
We'll see if she ends up being the Chad of this series. Your power is very special. Gets curb stomped the first person they see.
Nue is also observing Gakuro's training, and she says to herself, in my opinion, Gakuro, you're the most incredible one. He completes the training. All he had to do was make his billion slashes cut one fish. cool, you did eventually and stuff. So he's like, ah! And then he goes back to
There's such a
the.
oh fuck. I'm sorry. I'm gonna stop. We have so little time. This sucks though. I'm just gonna say there should be big holes where all those fucking things have landed to make it look like it's terrifying to get hit by them. As it is right now, it looks like someone dropped a bunch of dodgeball and he's like, I did it.
He gets back to the room. Koga's there to greet him, so I guess she's just been cleaning up the whole day. How much mess can two people make in one day when they're not in the room for most of the day? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, what is she doing from like 10 a.m. to like 6 p.m. when these characters are training? She's just sitting in a chair, not moving, sweeping the safe space
over and over. She's like, I better sweep it over there. Oh, now over there's dirty. I better sweep it over here. I'll never be done at this rate. I don't want to go home. She's also like really worried about what she said to Suo and this morning. Understandable. She, made a social faux pas and she's embarrassed about it because she's a teenager. Fair enough.
Sure.
Gakuro, of all people, is like, I'm sure it's nothing to worry about, which is like, wow, how are you saying that? But they sit down together and it's like, you know what? I wasn't supposed to tell you about that thing before, but now I'll tell you more. So there was a captain that she admired once. I don't think that she was like in love with him, but they were really close, even closer than she is with me. And the reason that she's such a good girl must be because of him. That was how important he was in her life. What a weird comment. And she starts to proceed, and then she's like, oh, no, actually, sorry. You need to wait until the daily refresh in order to get the rest of the backstory. So I'm going to go now.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gakuro. So she leaves, and Gakuro's like, oh, so Senpai has also lost someone dear to her. Those painful memories must have come back to her today. I wonder if her training's going well. She comes back. Training's going so well. I beat 2 stages, whatever that means. All right. So they are like, all right, we're progressing. They fist bump. And then the next day, Gakuro's like, I need to do better so that I can also beat the second stage. What's the second stage of his training? Oh my God. It's former Elimination Squad Captain Moroyoki. He's got to beat him. Okay.
Cool. I actually do kind of like that. I thought some of the stuff in this chapter was kind of cool. I don't know why. I just thought like some of the training elements were done better. Like this is what they should have opened up with. Instead of something where they're like Gakuro slash fishes in the sky while bullet shoot. Start with this. Start with the idea that someone Gakuro could never have beaten before is just who he has to survive against.
Sure.
Like, that's much cooler as a concept. It's much more in line with like shonen manga. Like, hey, training is difficult.
Old expression: you only have one chance to make a first impression.
Sure.
So first impression of Gakuro's training was, this is stupid. So yes, this is better, but
Yes.
It doesn't matter.
That's very fair.
All right, the Elusive Samurai, chapter 154, distinguished 1338. I'm going to skip this. 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 All right. So Akia's soldiers are exhausted, so he withdraws, and there's a stalemate. And during this, there is a lull between hostilities returning. So they're going to have a festival, which, of course, catches Tokiyuki off guard. But it's like, hey, that did happen. I mean, like, wars going on doesn't mean you can't have a festival because it's important for morale and blah 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 blah. Life goes on, etc., etc. So, Akiya instructs Tokiyuki like, "Hey, go buy supplies for the festival. Kusunoki Masatsura will guide you, and Shizuku and the Shinobi will gather information. We've got to defeat Moro now in order to reach Takauji, and so with the goods and people of Sakai, we'll prepare for battle." So this is kind of like part of strategy, even, is having this festival. Tokiyuki is like, oh my God, he's so beat up, but he shows no signs of distress. Okay, so they go into town to start gathering supplies and stuff like that. They're looking over stuff and stuff. Honestly, there is
Stuff
like
and then stuff and
I
stuff.
should be paying more attention because, like, hey, there's this member of their party that they're with right now, and we know so little about Masatsura, and he's like commenting on like his freaking backstory and stuff, and it's like, all right, I'm moving on from here. So,
Yeah. No, I mean, yes, absolutely. This is not that interesting.
Shizuku is like, all right, I'm gonna go and find some stuff, and she goes to do that, and they're like, she seems happy and totally human. And Genba's like, yeah, but I've never seen her eat or go to the latrine. What is it with this guy and poop? Come on, man.
He loves the poop.
Sheena needs some time alone with the weapons. She needs some time alone with them.
Yeah, I was like, I feel like this is a character trait that was established, but I just repressed it. Also, for the love of God, wear some underwear, girl. This is crazy.
Genba calls over to Natsu and is like, hey, you should also get yourself a good weapon because you're only memorable for getting captured and covered in poop. It's like, man, don't say true things to her. That's not nice. So
I do like her response was, getting covered in poop was because of you.
And you got covered in poop at the same time. Come on. But she notices that there are these animal sinews being sold at a place nearby. And it's like, oh yeah, they're used in like Mongolian bows, and they're from like, they don't sell well though because Japanese warriors use bamboo and other wooden stuff. But not just like, oh, this is why I couldn't find them. And we cut away from that. There is a jerk who is designed to have an ugly design because he is a jerk, and he bullies Matsuura and stuff like that. Matsuura is going to like give him money to make him go away because the guy is extorting him and stuff. But as he's reaching for it, Spider Natsu, she swings around and she's got these strings that allow her to swing agilely around through the air. And she's honestly very much reminds of the God, what are they fucking called? The scouting unit from Attack on Titan, because she's got like harnesses and stuff, you know, around her legs and everything. And she's like, yeah, I don't have like a Tengu body with me, but I can move as fast as a Tengu now. And she's like, yeah, I can use these, and I can use these for reconnaissance stuff now. She's really excited. She says to Shizuku, I can do all this stuff for whatever plan you have. And Genba's like, yeah, scheming is fun. And it's like, man, it's nice to see Natsu getting along with her group and stuff and feeling like, hey, she's having fun working together with them. Would have been nice if, you know, she did that before she was forced to make the choice to work with them. But this is also nice. That's the chapter.
Yeah. Yep. I wish I like had like a way to be like, oh, well, let's draw this out, but I really don't want to. Cool. Natsu will have something to do. Happy for her.
Akane-banashi, story 107, old name. Yeah, so she does you know, met up with Akane and is like, hey, can we talk? And so they, you know, sit down together. And
Now, Nick, do we really want to recap this chapter? Why don't we just jump forward? I bet no one cares about this stuff anyway.
Anyway, don't hurt me. She said it. Don't hurt me.
I'm just being a bitch. I'm sorry.
I do like that immediately there is like parental child awkwardness of like they don't know how to start the conversation.
Yeah.
Which is especially funny for, you know, two freaking storytellers who talked for a living for this kind of thing. But yeah, so it kind of is like, hey, this is the first time you like got to come and see my performances in person. What'd you think of it? And it's very sad at first because he says in response, I don't have the right to give you an opinion because I turned my back on Rakugo. But it was both a trip down memory lane and frustrating to hear. You've already shot way past where I was back then. You're a real Rakugoka now, Akane. And he gives you a little pat in the head. Yeah. And she's really like, stop that! She's happy, and then she's like, no, I'm his child, so I have to not be happy with this, basically. And she also is like, I'm nowhere near where you used to be. He asks her how she feels now that she is Rakugoka, but she says, nothing has changed, neither my end goal nor my determination to see it through. I'm struggling every day, but I'm having so much fun. We get a big old collage of like all of her time just as a Rakugoka, not just performing Rakugo, but just all the different stuff that she has done on this journey. meeting up with her friends, coming up with her, her plan with the animal costume stuff, meeting rivals and friends and all that. And after that, they start just having a nice little conversation as it seems to like things just go to just like the fun aspects of getting to do that kind of thing. Also, Akane's mom is kind of watching from the wings to make sure everything goes well, and it is. Okay, we go over from there to the conversation between Shigema and Miroku, who are they're having sake together, and Miroku says, "How many years has it been, Rokuen, since we last drank together?" And Shigema says, "That's my old name." And Miroku says, "Well, don't try to distance yourself. The Arakawa school was started when your predecessor took on the Myoseki of Shiguma Arakawa, but it was originally Kashiwaya. Our relationship is like main family and branch family, and to me, you are still Kisoba Kashiwaya," referring to, Shinso Arakawa, I think. Anyway, Isho Arakawa.
Yeah, sure.
And Rokuen Kashiwaya, not to mention Kyoichi. And Shigema corrects him and says Kyoji. It's interesting. Like, huh. So he was around for that. Okay. Mm-hmm. But Miroku says, "I understand that there's a rift between us right now, but you saw them together up there. Can't we go back to the way it used to be?" And Shigema says, "Well, that's not going to happen. Not so long as the past of Shigema and Miroku continues to bind him." And it seems he is referring to Isho in this, but Isho is back to back with someone
that's young Isho.
Is that?
We see the 4-panel, yeah.
Right, because it's the 4 of them together in that one, yeah. So Miroku's like, "I guess we've both been saddled with bothersome burdens. Is that why you're passing down Shigema's art? Isn't that what you call it over there? This was the first time I've heard her perform, but I can see why you'd want to choose her. The freewheeling abandon, the way she speaks, it reminds me quite a lot of the original Shigema, Hiroku Kashiwaya." And that is all we get of that conversation.
Yeah.
So, ominous foreshadowing.
Urara aged like a fine wine, and none of the others did. All of the other 3 are like ancient old men, and then I like every time I see her, I'm like, I don't know, like mid-40s.
Yeah, all these grandpa-looking dudes like, "I'm 37."
I was born in 1991. You're like,
whoa.
You're younger than me?
Performing on stage takes a lot out of you. Akane is doing, like job stuff, cleaning up after the debut event, and then Maikeru comes by along with Koguma and Kyoji, and so she's just like nice. She's like pleased to see them all. It's like, oh, it's nice to see friendly, familiar faces and everything. And Maikeru says, "I heard the big news. You got a recommendation for Tatsume. You know what we do now, right?" And Akane's like, "What we do?"
She's so nervous and terrified. There's like so much tension in this moment.
And then immediately after, she's like, "Have a drinking party. Have a drinking party." So they're like, "Let's go." And Akane's like, "It's the middle of the day." Ah!
Oh, Maikeru.
Maikeru kind of grabs Koguma. It's like, "You're coming too." And that leaves Kyoji with Akane. And he says, like, yeah, he took the time to celebrate with you. And Akane's like, well, yeah, he's always been successful. No, it's not just that. We didn't tell you because we didn't want you distracted, but next month, he's going to attempt the pinnacle that no one has tried since the expulsion incident. The Shinichi promotion test. Ooh. See, when presented under these terms, it does make you go like, oh, shit. Yeah. As opposed to when he was confronting Zensho and it was like, yeah, you show him.
Yeah, I mean, this is clearly what like the next big story is going to be. So this is the intriguing thing. But as it is, it's like a up and down chapter where it's like, it's cool to see Akane finally get to have a conversation with her dad. And the fact it's kind of disappointing works, like it like the awkwardness and everything in there is like, yeah, this actually does feel right. Like if they started throwing out a bunch of platitudes, it'd be weird. But there's still a little something in there. The conversation between the two Rakugo guys, Shiguma and the other guy, is good
Yudoku.
for us as an audience, but it is very exposition heavy. Like there's a lot of like, Shiguma, my old friend who used to go by this, like all these things that you would just say that you're just like, that's not how people would talk.
Just laying out the breadcrumbs, like, oh, here, have some lore, follow me along as I and get a little more sprinkles. So,
yeah, there's a little bit in there, but it's still good. This is still a fun chapter, and we're gonna see what happens. Yeah.
One Piece!
Nick, let's wrap this up with One Piece, chapter 1112, Hard Aspects. We continue the Yamato cover story. Yamato has been given permission, but before he can go off on it, there is something he has to do for Odin. We don't know what it is yet.
No. And Kinemon's like, you got to do something for me.
Yeah. So the explosions and the bombardments are going on. Neptune at this point, Venus, sorry, has taken out all the pacifistas. They've just been rendered sort of frozen, defeated at this point. So he's like, all right, let's go. We gotta stop all this stuff going on. So the giants are trying to escape. We cut over. Frankie is fighting. I forget this guy, Redbone or something like that. He's one of the vice admirals. Frankie does seemingly beat him, though.
Him.
Like, I know we kind of noted before that, like, this was like Enies Lobby had all the Marine captains at the end. They were kind of holding their own against them. This does feel like such a power jump that Frankie is one-shotting admirals. Red King, sorry, that's it. So, good for Frankie, but there's a lot of action going on. They try to get Bonnie onto the ship with one of the giants, but one of the other commanders, I don't remember this guy's name. I think Doberman or some fucking dog name. I don't care. He's like, you can't take that weapon of war, Bonnie. And Bonnie's like, oh no, I'm gonna whoop your ass. You can't talk to my dad that way.
Turns him into a child and kicks the shit out of him.
It is very funny. There's another one who's just like, no, you can't do that. That looks wrong.
I know, you're gonna get in some trouble.
Cut over to the Labosphere. Mars is there with York, and he's like, all right, this looks like the room from the video. Brah! Shoots out like this laser beam that just obliterates it.
This'll work.
Yeah, just rips straight through it. York is like, maybe don't do that. This is a little crazy. He's like, no, why is the message still going on? And she's like, look, if I were the Stella, I would hide the transmission snail somewhere else, basically. And Mars is like, okay, then I shall destroy the entire lab. She's like, no, you can't do that because there's a weapons...
Peak of efficiency, this man.
Yeah. So. He's like, there's a weapons lab and also a power plant. If you destroy those, everything explodes and we'll lose the punk records. So we can't do that. And he's like, all right, fine. Then you're one of his satellites. You tell me where it is. And she's like, all right, give me a moment. I'll try to figure this out. And Mars stops. And he's like, I hear the voice of a small creature. He looks up into the punk records. And York is like, is it a transponder sail? She does a little like symbol with her hand. She's like, yeah, it's a transmission transponder sail was recently completed. You could recognize it by its triangular spiral shell. And Mars is like, all right, show me how to get in. We cut around a lot this chapter, Nick.
Mm-hmm.
Cut over to Stussy, who's talking to Kaku, and Kaku's kind of taunting her. It's just like, aren't you lucky? It seems like he wasn't really interested in you. Or maybe it's the other way around. The bubbles are hard to read, but I guess Kaku is the one.
She's taunting Kaku because, like, she's like, you didn't get messed around with, essentially, after you get bubbled up.
Yeah. So they're like, what was that? Probably one of the 5 elders. And he's just like, they abandoned you, didn't they, Stussy? And she's like, well, not really, because I chose to stay behind.
Yeah.
Someone has to be the one to handle one final job. I'm going to say this right now. If Stussy dies and all this, I could not give less of a shit. So, who cares, I guess, is the tension on that point. cut over to Usopp's group, Nami's group, whatever you want to call them. They're like, wait, we're leaving Stussy behind. And they're like, yes, we need somebody to basically like deactivate the laser grid so we don't just get obliterated. So someone has to stay behind to do it. Let's do right by your sacrifice. Problem is, they don't have the Vega Force 1 anymore, and that would have flown them the additional distance. As it is now, it looks like they're going to land on the ground, which would probably destroy the Thousand Sunny. They don't really have time to like worry about that necessarily right now, because they're like, once Zoro and Jinbei show back up, we have to just like go, and whatever happens, happens. But Edison is like, oh, you guys are really, like going hard on this, and I admire your courage. So don't worry, I'll make sure that your ship touches down in water, and jumps off of the cloud, has like a little calculation in their brain, and it's just like, all right, I won't completely die as the result of all of this. Jumps down there, cut over. Not Mars, Jupiter, I think, is the sandworm, is inhaling, blowing everything in. It's going to stop the giant group, but Luffy, in his Gear 5, just kicks a building and is like, eat this! It just covers the mouth. So they're able to kind of get away, but that drained all the last of Luffy's strength. The giants give him a piece of shark meat, and he is immediately powered up again. Mercury shows up. God, there's so many fucking characters here. Mercury shows up. Luffy hits him with a red rock. It's been a while since we've seen one of those, but it hurts Luffy's hands really hard. So interesting there. Cut back over to the group up on the cloud. It looks like Saturn is climbing up. They start seeing like the edges of the like spider legs crawling up there. Cut over to the North Shore. Venus has shown up in front of Frankie and the Kuma group. Cut end the chapter with Mars, who has made it inside of the punk record. And he's like, here it is. Fortune was not on your side, Vegapunk. But he pauses because perhaps there's something else in this room. There's something going glub blub.
Yep, something's going glub blub, and it does not seem to be the transponder snail seemingly.
No, he also heard a voice, which probably isn't. A voice is like a term used a lot in One Piece. I don't know if this is specifically that, but voice is like commonly used for things like Zhou and stuff like that. Something where you're like, oh, this is actually like a big fucking deal. I want to know, we waited a month, that fucking giant robot's not in this chapter once.
Nope. Of course not. There's a lot of cool visuals in this chapter. I love the last shot of Venus as he's standing in front of Bonnie in the Straw Hats in silhouette. He looks so fucking metal in that shot.
I did hear one person's suggestion, and I want them to do it. Frankie's here. This is a guy who's half horse, half person.
Centaur mode!
I want Centaur mode to return! Frankie's like, I'll handle this. Burn.
I hope it's just as useless as last time he used it. I also love when Luffy drops the building in Jupiter, the indent that it makes is perfectly conformed to the shape of the building in his body. It's so goofy looking. And I also just really like the dynamic going on in this conversation between York and Mars, just how cold and efficient Mars is being the whole time, while York is, the gaps in her plan are starting to show, like the cracks in it of like, I want to get all the benefits from this, but she's also like, I also don't really like working with these guys. I don't like the way that
this is kind of terrifying.
Yeah, I don't want to destroy everything. I don't want to have to do all this bad stuff. I just really want all the good stuff that comes from betraying everything I've ever worked for before, but I don't want to lose it all. We'll see where a lot of this goes. It feels like there's a lot of pieces going that do make you pause for a brief moment to ask a quick question, and then immediately you get swept up in the next thing that's going on as you jump from place to place. And I'm sure that as One Piece does with all those trolling plates, eventually some of them will get answered after they've, been replaced by 3 more plates to be spinning around.
Yes. It's good stuff, though. I enjoy it. Good chapter. But Nick, we have to wrap this up. We have to give our favorite and MVPs for the week.
Yeah, I guess we do. Do you have a pick for that?
I think it's Undead Unluck. I think Undead Unluck was really cool this week. I like that little speech with Ichigo and Nico. It was a good little speech. I thought it was cool. Good stuff.
I guess I'm gonna give mine to Chainsaw Man.
Confirm.
It's just that the ball stomps are just really funny. I guess
That ball
just
stomp
kind
is
of-
excellent. It's so brutal. The idea of someone crushing you like that from like that, like straight up mud hole stomping it is into a nut shot is very visceral.
I think that's it. I mean, there's a lot of nice chapters this week, but I think that did make me laugh the hardest out of everything that happened this week. For my MVP, it's Ayame, because I just really like the jokes that she has about her yukata and going like, "No, you can't see." It's a funny joke.
Yeah, I like that. I think I'm gonna go with Oga from Green Green Greens. Really, really cool. I love that she gets to have all the cool facial expressions that Haku's been getting, everything like that. It's good stuff. The audience, by the way, agreed. Undead Unluck, chapter of the week, and Oga from Green Green Greens as character of the week.
Yeah, we had some nice character moments during this week of stuff. Absolutely. All right. That brings us to the end of Weekly Manga Recap, and we didn't actually even go that late. So good job, Quinn.
Good job.
Yeah. All right. That is going to do it for Weekly Manga Recap. Thank you all for listening / watching. More of the show is available on weeklymangarecap.podbean.com for the audio version. It's also on iTunes and Spotify and other podcast feed type places. Our video episodes are posted on youtube.com/weeklymangarecap and have an opening sequence done by Milo Jack Stilts and Wensley Dale Shitter. Thank you guys for making that for us. Occasionally, they also have title cards done by Steve Man, whose artwork you can check out by just searching for Steve Man Art. It's posted in many different places. Ninja X3i helps us to maintain a lot of just like information in the Google Doc to help us keep track of recommendations that we've taken, like Dragon Ball now, and other different things. Also MVP voting and favorite series voting and that kind of thing. We also have a Discord server, which is basically linked everywhere that this gets posted to. Join our community on there, and you will be linked to all the other good stuff and also get alerts for when the show goes live.
Yes. I think, by the way, so Golden Week is coming up. It is not this week. We get more chapters this week, I believe. But the week after, we'll have a special Jeopardy episode, I believe.
Yes. Okay.
All right. I do have a new recommendation for those of you who are curious. I debated about this. Eventually just decided to go with the one that was shortest. So this one is, I think, 5 volumes right now. At least there's 5 volumes available. This is a very cute series about a high schooler and a senior citizen who bond over their love of boys' love manga. This is BL Metamorphosis. I've read a volume of this already. This was recommended, by the way, by Mandela. I've read a volume of this already. Really, really sweet. Very, very cute series. And I'm looking forward to having a reason to make sure I go out and read the rest of it.
Okay. Awesome. All right. That is what we will have in a little bit of time, and we will catch you all later. Have a good one, everybody. On the next Weekly Manga Recap.
Do 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 do. Bye.